How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, very good. Do we have a different time zone?
No,
It's
no, 11 for me as well.
11, so good morning for you. Good morning. So, Dr. Lauren, welcome to my podcast. This is gonna be a beautiful conversation for us because you are a very good fit for this podcast. You have integrity. Your science communication is amazing. I first discovered your work in the mass research review. And
Yeah.
I start following you doing a few podcast episodes and your articles. You are collaborating with experts in the field. I follow your background a little bit, but I would like you to explain me and the audience a little bit about your academic background, just because I know you have studied with a few experts in the field, and I want you to mention that.
Yeah, I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and nutrition. And after university, I worked in New York City as a personal trainer and a group fitness instructor. And I became really interested in exercise science and particularly the resistance training literature at the time. And so I volunteered in Brad Schoenfeld's lab just to get a sense of, what the research is like, and would I actually be interested in doing that myself? And I was. So I decided to go back to school to get a master's degree. I did that at the University of South Florida with Bill Campbell. And I also spent a summer in between the 2-year masters in Fullerton, California, with Andy Galpin doing some single fiber analysis. And then I moved to Canada to pursue a PhD at McMaster University with Stu Phillips.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I think that you learn uh, quite a bit studying and being close to all these experts, like every specific area, like Brand Schoenfeld and hypertrophy, but like also uh, protein synthesis and protein intake and different collecting different kind of evidence from all these experts is like quite awesome.
Yeah, it's really unique to see how different people set up their labs and the different kind of tools that are available, because you can answer different types of questions, right? So when we think about what Brad Schoenfeld does, it's very kind of practical, translatable to the trainer or to the lifter. Those are the types of questions he answers. But when I was really interested in doing biopsies and looking at the more molecular analyses, I was able to do that with Andy and then subsequently with Stu. And all of these different approaches and types of research questions and types of analyses have their kind of upsides and downsides, right? Because I'm just, as an intellectually curious person, when we do the study and it shows, more hypertrophy with this or more strength with that, then I would say, but why? Or why are there so many differences between how individuals respond? And so that piqued my curiosity to try to explore, the why behind the what. But then once you do those more molecular analyses, they don't always answer all the questions either. So there's always more questions to ask.
There are always more questions. Exactly. That's very, and like your curriculum is impressive, Lauren. Like I admire you in that way, and also uh, you were you were interested in the female side, like more about women, because I've been a coach for more than 15 years, and I'm coaching ladies for quite a bit, and it's quite confusing sometimes, the spread of misinformation on the social media and all the coaches, and like, do we need to sync this cycle with the training and the diet? And they get so confused that sometimes we are just trying to lower the noise and try to clear their minds from this misinformation, the gimmicks that are over there, all the scams. So you were quite interested into clear the path for other females to understand what an actual evidence-based plan it is.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I first got into the research, when I decided that I wanted to go back to get my master's, I wanted to go to a lab that would allow me to study women. And I really wanted to learn more about, are there sex-based differences? Should we be doing things differently? It was very important to me to be able to explore some of those questions. Um, and so during my master's, I looked at different training volumes in women. During my PhD, I looked at the influence of the menstrual cycle and of oral contraceptives on protein synthetic outcomes. And of course, along the way, I do a lot of science communication through mass and through other outlets. So I've definitely had a finger on the pulse of, okay, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, people used to really say, there's this huge gap, right? Women are very underrepresented in the literature. And I get that because I felt that way. Um, However, I feel like people are still saying that now and ignoring a wealth of research that we have, because the truth is many labs are and have been doing research in women. And of course, there's more to come. There's always, as we said, more questions to explore. But it's important to acknowledge that many of the papers that have come out over the past several years have replicated studies that were initially conducted in men. And time again, we're seeing, hey, you know what? The same things that work for men are going to work for women. And when we look at, muscle physiology, there really aren't as many sex differences as one might think.
Exactly. I agree 100%. And I've been doing that like even 10 to 15 years ago. I remember because I am very close to my clients and I say like, hey, listen, you have a bad day because you have your cycle. Let's not train today, or like just take a rest day and let's just come back tomorrow. And like you had to change everything and pair the training and the diet with these phases and like all these trends we see on social media of like, but my luteal phase, I had to eat this way. It's so complicated sometimes. And you have a mom of 2 kids who just barely train and get even more confused. Do you see that also like in the field?
I absolutely see this, and it's really disappointing because I remember when I was becoming a trainer, and it was hard enough to get women to just lift weights effectively, right? Because it was like, oh, if you want the long, lean lines, then you should be lifting the 1 pound dumbbells, or, don't have too much protein because you're going to get so bulky. All of those types of, so which meant that for a long time, women just didn't do effective training, and therefore you're just spinning your wheels doing group fitness classes that don't really change your body composition. You're not, and even though their goals are aligned with needing muscle growth, that's not a connection that we're kind of able to explain or that they're willing to digest. And I think we've come a long way, and now more and more women are interested in lifting weights, and that's great. But it's like we're in this new wave of misinformation where somehow everything is so much more complicated for women. And there's messages around the cycle syncing, which is a totally ineffective training strategy that essentially cuts down on your consistency, which is key if we want to facilitate adaptations, and even cuts into habit building, because we need to do things often and frequently if we want to build the habits. And then I see other things like, protein timing is really important only for women, or women need to be training in these different rep ranges, or women need to be avoiding these types of exercises. And it's very confusing. And I think it's unfortunate because we went through this kind of wave of, oh, now we're going to see more and more women in the weight room. But now where the messaging is sort of, okay, I get I have to lift weights, but I'm so confused about what to do and what not to do that I don't even know where to start. And then it just puts people off lifting to begin with.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, it seems to me that we solve one problem and then we have another one. And like, but like overall, I think we are moving forward. a little by little, I can see more women involved into the lifting weights and lifting weights, and it's good for health, it's good for your appearance. It's like not that you are gonna lift just a dumbbell and tomorrow you're gonna be Ronnie Coleman. It's like it's not like that, and they're gonna see even more example of like different journeys of people coming from just barely a beginner and become a night with a nice physique at the end of the process, and we can see that anytime. But Lauren, I have a question for you. What does for you mean to be a evidence-based professional today? Just your definition. Like I don't want a formal definition, but like in a whole sense of like you have quite experience in the field, like training people, but also in the lab. Also, you teach and you are always learning more. So how do you mix all this to become an evidence-based practitioner?
Well, I like to separate things that are just interesting to me as a scientist. Like I said before, I want to, I'm curious. I want to learn the why. But sometimes now, people are so interested in science, which is good, but unfortunately, not everybody is sort of equipped to interpret and analyze the science, which is what we try to do in mass, is sort of cut through the noise for people. And unfortunately, because more and more people are trying to read science and interpret science and apply science, then I find a lot of people are kind of taking those results that might be what I would describe as scientifically interesting, meaning this is about a molecular mechanism, or this is a rodent study, or this is a hypothesis that really hasn't been properly investigated, and then skipping all the steps and saying, oh, we should start applying or implementing this practice, whether it's around nutrition or around training. And that to me is sort of an attempt to be really evidence-based, but it's missing the point, because there are plenty of studies that we will do that are never meant to be practically relevant or actionable for trainers or for people who are trying to design their own exercise program. And it's important to delineate those which are investigating the mechanism underpinning something, because that's important and interesting, but it doesn't change how you eat or how you train or how fat loss works or how muscle growth works. So I think it's important to certainly, there are principles that we agree on as a scientific community that I think most trainers would agree with, just the basics of things like training volume matters. But there's also a lot of flexibility. Like there's no must do exercise. There's no must do training frequency. There are certain elements that are not that important. Like effort is really important, the training volume, your technique. But other than those kind of basics, then we can really work around and design and adjust a program that is individualized for the client. And so I think yes, we want to be evidence-based in the sense that we adhere to those principles, that we know what works. Cycle syncing is a clear violation of those principles that we know work.
Yes.
But then, of course, as a practitioner, you have a client in front of you and you need to understand, what are their goals? What is their skill set? What is their background? How much time are they willing to invest? And then you create a program that is appropriate for that individual.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. And also I see that sometimes coaches, they get lost into this forest. They don't see the forest just because they are too close to the detail, the minutia of like, yeah, but your hormones, and they try to find just this little detail, like this supplement is going to change everything, instead of thinking on the foundation and the principles that make a real transformation. That's like, at least in my case, I am always trying to get into the complexity, but bring down basic tools and basic application for clients, because at the end of the day, they are not researchers. They, like, as you say, they are not equipped. So sometimes they came with some question and they say, hey, Valentin, I saw this fitness influencers saying that we need to eat 4 grams of protein per, and they say, no, listen, you don't have to do that, like, because there are so many things to explain to you that, like, just you don't need to do that. So sometimes we are like much more like a filter for them, and then like we are cleaning the path for like good stuff. And like also, Lauren, you mentioned something important, like the empirical evidence we collect. We have client and the client another hour, and like so many clients you have in front of you. So sometimes coaches get missing to this citation of studies and the complexity, because it's complicated, and you have a quite experience on that. And then when they are gonna bring real world applications, they're trying to change their practice all the time. And I say, listen, that's wrong. Your practice should be a foundation of principles and how body works. And then the studies are updating your practice, of course, but they can change your foundation. That's wrong.
Yeah, it's also really important to understand that many studies aren't designed to tell you how many sets you should do per week, right?
Exactly.
A lot of times it's trying to test an extreme, right? So we see that in the early research in concurrent training, right? They had the group doing lifting and the group doing cycling, and then they had the concurrent doing both, but therefore they were doing double the volume.
Exactly.
And that was the interference effect, right? And so, but then once they started doing studies that were more representative of how people would really train, then we realized, oh, it's not that big of a deal. So when I see people think of oh, well, in this study they ate 3 grams of protein per pound of body weight, and therefore, or in this study they did 20 sets per muscle group per week, and therefore this is how we should all. It's like, well, the study didn't set out to answer that question. It set out to look at extremes and maybe test an upper limit. That's not
Exactly.
the same as, oh, this is how you should be training.
Exactly. Yeah, that's more like a guidance instead of just a very strict principle to follow. I agree. That's a very, very precise answer. And Lauren, what do you think? What is your take on this science thinking that we see, this trend that we see online? There are any evidence we have of that, or like just scam?
No, I mean, as I said, I've done a lot of the work in this space. I think it's interesting to look at the female sex hormones because we've known so much about testosterone for so long. But when we look at, the rate of growth in men and women, they seem to be the same relative to the starting point. And so it's clearly testosterone is not the end all be all of muscle growth. And so that's interesting. But there's a lot of claims about estrogen and muscle growth or progesterone and muscle growth that really are not supported by human evidence. And so there are some hypotheses that are generated from rodent data that don't seem to pan out in humans. And the cycle syncing thing has become a trend not only in fitness but in all areas of nutrition, of supplementation, of sort of how you should plan your work schedule.
Yes.
And again, I just it's not only not evidence-based, it's really confusing for women because it's trying to say, oh, you should switch things here and switch things there. And the reality is most people don't even know which phase they are in. And so it's funny to me when I see these, oh, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Okay, well, what about the woman whose cycle is only 3 weeks?
Exactly.
What about the woman whose cycle is 5 weeks? It doesn't work. So, and it's good. It's good news that this isn't something that we need to worry about because it would really throw a wrench in people's programs. And I get a lot of pushback when I point to the evidence and I say, you know what? We get the same protein synthesis response, the same growth response, the same strength. It's the only thing that we should really be worrying about is if you have symptoms. And if so, then as you said before, skip a workout, change up the exercise, reduce the intensity, it's not that big of a deal. But I see more and more online people say, no, for this whole week, I
Oh,
have terribly low energy. And I'm like, well, come
yeah.
on. I mean, um,
Yes.
like, what are you going to do? Are we just not training? Um,
Yeah. And
and I
say,
think also we need to acknowledge that there are many reasons why you might feel low energy or not motivated to train on one day or another day that have nothing to do with your menstrual cycle.
exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I found that as an excuse, especially because I am a male. Sometimes I remember I have a few conversations with my clients, and they say to me, "Well, you don't know because you are a man," and I say like, "Oh, that's insane," because it's like is I cannot operate, like I cannot understand a human body just because I am a male. Like it's crazy. And sometimes they found that as an excuse to either not follow the diet or not follow the program. And like, yeah, you are a man, you don't understand. And then I say, but it is so many evidence we have. And like, let's say, like as you mentioned before, you feel bad today. That's fine. It's okay. It's understandable. Don't skip the training today. Let's 2 days. But then like don't follow the program at all the whole week is I didn't find any evidence of that, and even in my empirical.
No, and I mean, if they're doing that, then they can't blame you when they don't get the results, right? Because if it's one thing, for example, if the week that the client is on their period, if they know they tend to gain more scale weight and you're trying to lose fat, then if you're putting in all of those body weights, maybe you mark, oh, you're on her period this week. And so if you need to, you can kind of exclude those scale weights when you're looking at your trends. That's a reasonable, implementation of, okay, let's focus on this. Let's make a note of this. But otherwise, I wouldn't encourage any substantial changes to your diet or your training other than just to be, if it's important to you and if you're tracking everything anyway, then you can make a note. But otherwise, even if you do notice differences, they're going to be very specific to you. And so they're not something you can predict. And if you are expecting that, oh, because of where I am in my cycle, I'm going to have a terrible workout today, then you probably will. And it has nothing to do with your cycle. It's the psychological implication of telling yourself that.
Okay, so you think that psychology plays a big role over there?
I mean, absolutely. And we see this, I mean, not only in this circumstance, but in general, there's a reason why if you are a coach on a sports teams and you want to pump up your athletes, right? You want good morale. You want to say, if you tell people, you're going to have a terrible game, you're getting injured today. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine saying that. um, and then they'll be tentative, they won't be as confident, and then that is when injuries happen. And so you don't want to disempower people, and I feel like a lot of that messaging is doing that. It's taking the agency away from the woman and reducing her to her hormones and then saying you have no control.
Exactly. Yeah, I found the same. Like sometimes I think that it's a trend in the fitness field. People are trying to complicate it to sell their solution. They say, "Oh, this is too complicated. Like, so many ingredients. You need to look out the nutrition factor and see every single ingredient." And like, instead of like, I am guilty of being simple. I'm trying to say, "Hey, listen, like, just follow the basics of like, do your training, go to the grocery store, follow, calories overall, and then like the protein fat ratio. Don't get too crazy into the detail of like every single ingredient, and then like as you say, during your cycle, if you don't feel good, let's skip a day, but don't get too complicated." And I see that there are so many coaches and professionals trying to complicate the things, and they try to look smart and then trying to sell their solution of like, I had the perfect workout or the perfect diet for you. You are gonna pay your cycle. And some people, they are not equipped, so they think, oh, they are advanced, they are smarter, they know things that my coach, which is so simple, Do you see that as a trend also?
I do, yes. I see that a lot. And it really leads people to focus on the wrong things. I mean, when people the questions that I get the most often are about things that don't matter. What do you think about this supplement? Or should I have 1.6 grams per kilogram of protein or 1.8 grams per kilogram of protein? And like, these are not the big picture things that we need to be focusing on, because if you just train hard and eat enough, you're going to make progress. And if along the way, you're so focused on, well, could I get this other 1% if I added creatine, or could I get this other 1% if I ate, 5 more grams of protein per day? It's not worth unless you are an elite bodybuilder and this is your life, and then you want to look at absolutely everything, then okay. But the questions I get are not from those people. They're from people who don't even have consistent training and diet habits in place to begin with, and they're focusing on the supplement or program hopping is another thing that I see a lot, because as you say, it seems like, oh, well, if they're a hormone coach, then they must know something. They must have this special knowledge. So I'll go with them. And then it doesn't work, because being a hormone coach is bullshit. And so then you go to the next person who's promising that, they know everything about training women in their 40s. And so it's this kind of cycle of inconsistency.
Yes. So they are jumping program to program, and they lack the consistency they need into this simple program of like just training the basics and like just eat enough protein, don't get it, excessive calories, and then like just do your best at your effort, but like don't get too complicated. I agree 100%, Lauren. But how do you think we can make people operate more on like this principle thinking instead of just details and minutia that doesn't matter? How do you think we can change people's minds in like or coaching jobs?
Oh, it's a tough question, because it's marketing, right? And so the fitness industry has been doing that forever, because what's flashy and what makes big promises and what seems to be this special thing to give you the edge, that gets people's attention. And when we talk about the basics, it's kind of boring, right? It's like,
Yes.
muscle growth takes time, fat loss takes time. You're not going to transform your body in 3 weeks. It's just not, isn't going to happen. And people don't want to hear that. People want to hear that they can have this instant result. And that's something that I hope we can encourage people to move away from. But we see it with fad diets. We see it in the supplement industry, and we see it in the way that people are demonizing certain things on social media, right? Like, this food is terrible for you, or you have to eat this food, or you have to be on this supplement, or you have to be taking hormones, or it's very, very hard to remember, oh, I just need to stick to the basics, when people are constantly consuming messaging that says, you need a weighted vest. You should never go running. Wait, you have to go running. No, you have to sprint. Oh, no, you need to lift really heavy. No, you need to be doing jumping exercises. And so I understand why people are confused, but I think hopefully more and more people will start to have access to people who are putting out high quality information that makes sense, like that's clear, that it is saying, because we need people to just think more critically. Because if we sit down and we say, okay, if there was some magic thing, if this was going to change everything for fat loss or for muscle growth, don't you think it wouldn't be a secret hidden, behind somebody's website that you only found on Instagram? Of course not. Everybody would know about it. Everybody would be talking about it. That's happened with the the GLP-1 drugs, right? Those aren't a secret. They're everywhere because it's a game changer for weight loss. And if there were something like that, that was this big breakthrough, everyone would be aware of it.
Yes, yes, that's a very good answer. And you are doing a great job at mass. I'm subscriber, long time subscriber, but mass subscription is for like coaches or people who are very into fitness. So let's say we have clients and they get this papers analysis and say like this is too much for me, so I need something more ready to apply something. So we are in the middle, let's say, as a coaches, like we consume this information, we try to digest, and they bring back with solutions. But at the same time, our clients are constantly bombarded with all this information on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and like it's complicated for them. Like cold plunges, should I do cold plunges after because it's good? It's like, yeah, but like, listen, we have few evidence of like muscle growth is not very friendly with cold plunges, so I prefer you to avoid this. But they came with me, they came with answer all the time, and I see that as a frequently as you say, question that doesn't matter. Like it's like you are losing your attention from the variables that are very powerful and can bring you with the result you want. Instead, you are focusing on the wrong variables.
Yeah, and I think as a coach, you have to pick your clients, right? So sometimes the client who is constantly going to, it's one thing to ask questions, that's fine. I know I'm that way. I would want to know, well, why did you change this? Like, why are we doing it this way? That's fine, but it's another thing if they don't trust you, because you have to have trust in that coach and client relationship. And so if because of what they're consuming on social media or from their friends, it's like, okay, well, if they ask me and I tell them, then that should be the end of the conversation, right? Otherwise, there isn't that trust there, and they think, oh, well, other people must know more than you, and then that's probably not a great client coach relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, because we at the end of the day we build a team. I see coaches coaching as that. Like we build a team, and then if I don't have your support and your your trust, it's not gonna work. And like if you are constantly changing and changing and changing and doubting, yeah, it's gonna be a miss of time and energy and resources. As you say, you are not for everybody.
Yeah, and if you have a client like that, then it's important to remind them that they hired you as a coach for a reason, right?
Yes.
And so, you hired me because I'm the expert, and you came to me for guidance. And so either if you think you know better, then I guess you don't need me.
You don't
Or
need
if you
me.
think TikTok knows better, then I guess you don't need me.
Yes, yes. Okay, yeah, that's a very good answer. Lauren, do you think that women should adjust their training and their diet during or after their menopause? Do you think that there is any evidence that we need to change the most critical, the fundamental stuff like training and doing wave? Like, do you think we need to change something of that?
No, I mean, I think unfortunately this group is really being targeted with some bad advice, because there are menopause related symptoms that a lot of women will experience that can affect how they feel physically, their sleep, stress levels, and that can definitely make it feel harder to adhere to your diet or to your training program. And so I think we need to be understanding and empathetic about that piece of it. But the claims that people are saying, oh, you need to do a different rep range, or you need to avoid low intensity cardio, or you need to double your protein intake just because you're a perimenopausal woman, there's really, really no evidence to support that. And I wish that more people would just start lifting weights, because even if you just do it twice a week, it can really, really improve your long-term physical function, quality of life. And so, if for women who have never lifted weights and they are in their late 40s, early 50s, can be a really, really powerful tool, not only for your health, but also for the way your body looks, for your body composition. And I know there are women who are very concerned about changes in body composition around menopause, or feeling like fat loss is much harder than it used to be. But instead of really, really focusing on constant dieting, I wish there would be more of a shift to, why don't we try to maintain body weight and really focus on pushing in the gym? Because I think the long-term results would be far better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I see that not a lot of coaches and dietitians teach people that we should do maintenance. Like, okay, this phallus phase is fine and dieting is good, but like we should ramp up calories sometimes and just eat a normal at baseline, and then recover your metabolism and eat, like, be a little bit more flexible and maintain your body weight for quite a bit. Focus on the muscle gain side instead of just always being deprivated, always restriction. Like I'm at least in my experience, I see that like frequently.
Yeah, I mean, someone commented on a post of mine the other day, and they said, "Why are you promoting calorie deficits? We know that calorie deficits don't work because everyone just regains the weight afterwards." And I said, "Well, that's not a sign that the calorie deficit doesn't work. It's a sign that the person is approaching it in a way that is really short-sighted and doesn't think about what happens, quote unquote, after the diet, because and that's why these extreme diets aren't sustainable. And that's why there is a weight regain issue, because if you try to cut out so many things that you enjoy, then that's not a sustainable diet. And if you try to lose weight really, really, really quickly, then that's not a sustainable diet. So it's not about the fact that the calorie deficit in and of itself isn't a good approach. It's the way that you look at the diet, the length of time that you're thinking about it, and remembering that, okay, it's not like 6 weeks and the diet's over and now I just don't think about what I eat. Because then of course you will regain the weight.
Yes, you need to learn certain habits that you sustain during the maintenance period. Yeah, I teach my clients all the time how to do this transition between the fat loss and the maintenance, because I found out that maintenance is critical. Sometimes they do a very successful fat loss diet and they rebound. So I teach them, hey, like, listen, like this is not just buffet style. Like now you gotta eat, but like a little bit more of like good stuff for quite a bit, and then we'll start eating a little bit more flexible, but like still checking your body weight. Because some people, especially females, they are so afraid of the scale. I don't understand. It's like, hey, listen, like you need to check your bank account to see how much money you have, instead of just looking at just the scale as your enemy. You should see that as your ally, and like just collecting the data and like see the information. Don't judge the scale, and don't wait until the scale show you a number you like. Just take the data, and like even if your cycle is coming, it's good to know, because you are gonna see that your body weight is ramping up, and it's not body fat you are gaining, it's just body weight behavior. So do you find that relationship also a little tricky sometimes, that women are afraid of scale?
Yeah, I think it's this emotional attachment to a particular number, right? And then if it's not that number, then I'm gonna have a terrible day. And I think it's hard because for a lot of women, this is like ingrained from early on that, you want to be thin and you want to lose weight. And if the number on the scale is higher, then it's not good. And then you failed. And so it's complicated. But I also think that's why we need to look at other metrics of progress, right? So the scale is just one thing, but let's take some pictures in the same clothing and the same lighting, and let's do that every couple months. And let's look about how our clothes fit. And let's think, oh, am I getting stronger? Because that's a good indication. Am I able to do more than I was last month on that exercise? That's a good sign. And then we can kind of shift into focusing less on the number on the scale and more into overall, how do I look and feel and perform? And that, I think, can help develop a more healthy relationship with one's body.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree with that. I try to do that all the time. And question I have for you, Lauren, like, what personal values gives you guides your work and your professional your research overall? What are your principles, your values that you bring to your work?
I think being ethical, maintaining my integrity is very important to me. Keeping an open mind, always being willing to learn and to ask questions of others if really, and if in any aspect I'm not so sure about something, or I'm trying to do some sort of communication that is a little bit outside my direct area of expertise, then I will reach out to somebody who studies bone because they know more about bone than I do, or I'll reach out to an endocrinologist because they know more about hormones than I do. And so I think when you are the work that I do is very integrative. So we're looking at different areas of physiology and trying to integrate them. And that's important because that's really relevant to just human physiology in general, right? Like we are an integrated complex system. And so when we only look at one thing, we're kind of missing the point because those things all interact. But I think regardless of whether I'm doing science or communicating science or collaborating with others in any kind of intellectual capacity, it's just really important to have that respect for everybody else's expertise and to never think that there isn't more to learn, because that's the nature of science. That's why I wanted to become a scientist, because you're always learning. There's always more.
There's always more. Like keep your mind open to learning and keep expanding your knowledge. And even like our clients teach at least for me, in my case, like from my clients I learn a lot because I try things and I thought this is gonna be great, and then like you try and it's this is not gonna be great, and then you change it, and like all the time I'm adjusting. That's what I try to start the conversation explaining the evidence-based coaching, because I think that the empirical evidence we collect with our clients, with our experience, is very important. Keeping your eyes open and like always see your client, which is the ultimate goal. They are hiring you to become better, or like, as you say, to clear the noise of all this misinformation and being guided by somebody who is an expert.
Yeah, and not everything will work for everyone. And that's being a good coach, the ability to switch on the fly if that exercise the person hates it or it's uncomfortable for some reason, or okay, that's fine, we do something else. And I think an experienced coach has no problem just switching gears. Figuring out plan B, but an inexperienced coach or someone who's a very rigid thinker will panic because it's like, oh, that was the plan, right? So you need to be able to be flexible.
Yes, yes, of course. That's amazing, Lauren. And I want to end this conversation with if you can give one piece of advice to the female audience that are afraid to either starting training with weights or are too confused into this social media cycle syncing or hormones or details, what could you say to them?
You can get excellent results just by getting started, lifting weights, making sure that it's challenging enough, and trying to progress over time. And I think if you're having trouble shifting through the noise online, then it can be really helpful to hire a coach, even if it's just for a short period of time, because it will teach you proper technique and get you a bit more comfortable in the gym. And then you can decide whether you're fine going at it alone from there, or whether having the coaching framework is really helpful for you.
That's an amazing advice. Thank you so much, Lauren. If like people want to follow you, where can they find you? Your
I'm
work?
on Instagram, Dr. Lauren CS1. As you mentioned, we have the mass research review, so that's kind of longer form interpretations of science and how to contextualize it in the greater literature. And if there's a practical application, we'll give it to you. And I also co-host a podcast weekly called Front Page Fitness with Eric Trexler.
Eric Trexler is an amazing expert, and you're always posting about social media misunderstanding. So I highly recommend you follow Lauren. She's amazing. And also, if you are not subscribed to the mass subscription, that's a must. Especially if you are a coach, you wanna go to the next level. You're gonna learn much more about scientific studies and how to apply that knowledge into your field and your practice. So I highly recommend also the mass subscription. So Lauren, amazing. I enjoy the conversation so much, and I am we are in agreement in so many topics, and I'm glad that you are doing your science communication, because from the female standpoint, I don't see a lot of professional females claiming science and with ethical grounds, like you say, and integrity, and trying to be a good voice, the voice of reason for other females who are lost into these misconceptions and scams and gimmicks. So your job is amazing. Keep doing it. I am a big fan of you and all your job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So I am glad you have the time to spend with me today, and I hope everybody listening this found this useful. So I'm glad you spend the time with me, and I'm glad you have a beautiful day, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.